Ethan had always believed that life was a linear story, a straight path where cause met effect and choices led inevitably to consequences. He had structured his existence carefully, a stable job, an apartment overlooking the city skyline, a circle of friends who never asked uncomfortable questions. Life was predictable, and in his mind, that was safe. But that night, as the city hummed beneath him with the low, comforting buzz of electricity and neon, something appeared that defied everything he thought he knew. It was subtle at first, a faint shimmer in the corner of his eye. He blinked, rubbed them, convinced it was some trick of the fluorescent light, but the shimmer persisted, growing warmer, brighter, until it coalesced into a single object suspended in the air. A book, hovering a mere foot above his desk, its cover rippling with colors that seemed impossible, colors that were not in any spectrum he had ever learned, nor could he describe in words. And yet, the title was clear, glowing softly across the surface. If this appeared, you've crossed the final quantum reality. Ethan froze, the words sinking into his mind with a weight that was both terrifying and thrilling. His rational brain screamed that this was absurd, that he must be hallucinating, that the exhaustion from his long week had finally caught up with him. But his body, every nerve ending, told a different story. This was real, and the moment he touched the book, everything changed. The walls of his apartment seemed to dissolve like mist. The faint hum of the city outside twisted into a cacophony of harmonics, overlapping in frequencies he had never known existed. Colors bled into one another, forming landscapes that shifted and melted with every blink of his eyes. In the space of a heartbeat, his familiar room had been replaced by layers upon layers of realities, each vibrating with its own rhythm. In one layer, he saw himself walking through an endless forest, trees towering impossibly high, their leaves shimmering like liquid silver. In another, he floated on an ocean under a sky that glowed with molten gold, waves moving not with water, but with light. Somewhere else, he saw a cityscape, but it was inverted. Buildings stretched downward into a void, streets floating above like ribbons of glass. And in each reality, versions of himself existed, living lives he had never known. Some were laughing with strangers, some were crying in solitude, and some simply stared at the infinite horizon, aware of a truth Ethan couldn't yet grasp. A voice whispered, not through his ears, but directly into his consciousness. It was soft, yet undeniable. Every choice you've ever made, every path you've avoided, converges here. Only the final reality remains for those brave enough to face it. Ethan's heart pounded violently. He wanted to scream, to ask questions, to run. But every instinct of his body betrayed him, frozen in awe and fear. He realized that he was no longer merely observing these realities. He was experiencing them. Every emotion, every memory from these alternate lives flooded into him, overlapping, colliding, sometimes conflicting in ways that made his head spin. Time, as he understood it, ceased to exist. One moment he was in his apartment, the next he was running across deserts of crystal, the sands sparkling with starlight. In another, he floated above a city that burned in slow motion, flames freezing midair while shadows danced with silent intent. Each scene played out simultaneously, yet sequentially, forming a tapestry of infinite possibility. Ethan's mind struggled to process the magnitude of what was happening. He could feel the weight of every choice he had ever made, every word he had ever spoken, every regret and triumph, all compressed into this single moment. It was overwhelming. Then, a new presence appeared, not a voice this time, but a figure. It was himself, yet not himself, a version of Ethan who had already crossed this threshold, who had seen the final quantum reality and survived. The figure's eyes were calm, ancient in a way that no human eyes could be, reflecting stars and galaxies that defied comprehension. You see, the figure said, this is not chaos, this is the convergence. Every possibility, every outcome, every potential life exists here, and yet only one path leads forward. Only one version of you can step into the final reality. The rest remain as echoes. Ethan swallowed hard. Why me? Why now? He asked, his voice trembling, but the figure did not answer directly. Instead, it gestured to the book, which now hovered between them like a living thing, its pages flipping as if caught in an invisible wind. You were ready, the figure said. That is all that matters. The universe does not offer this to the hesitant, nor to the fearful. It appears only when the mind is prepared to understand the weight of infinity. Ethan reached for the book again, and the moment his fingers brushed its surface, reality shattered further. The layers multiplied, splitting into dimensions he couldn't have imagined. He saw himself as a child, crying in a room he had long forgotten. As an old man, walking alone down a street he had never known. As someone else entirely, living a life filled with joy and sorrow he had never experienced. Each vision came with sensations, cold, warmth, pain, joy, all of them indistinct yet piercingly real. He felt the burden of choices he had made and the liberation of those he had avoided. The universe was teaching him, showing him that life was not linear, not predictable, not confined by reason. Ethan's mind screamed for coherence, for a single narrative to hold on to, but there was none. The figure's calm gaze reminded him that this was intentional. You must let go, it said. Only by surrendering your attachment to what you know can you see what is. He did not understand fully, but instinctively he let go. He stopped fighting the shifting landscapes, the overlapping realities, the torrent of emotions. He let himself fall into the flow, and for the first time he felt a strange peace amidst the chaos. And then he heard it, a melody, soft and clear, threading through every layer of reality. It was the same tune he had hummed as a child, the same rhythm that had accompanied his most joyous moments. It was a thread, a connection, a reminder that despite the infinite possibilities, there was something constant, something eternal. The book pulsed in response, brightening, as if acknowledging his understanding. The figure nodded, silently approving, and stepped aside. Your path is visible now, it said. The next step is yours to take. Ethan looked ahead and saw a portal, faint but unmistakable, suspended in the shifting layers of existence. It shimmered with every color, every light, every possibility he had ever seen. The final reality awaited him. But even as he approached, he felt the gravity of what lay behind him, the echoes of lives, the weight of infinite choices, the knowledge that each step forward meant leaving countless versions of himself behind. And yet there was no hesitation. Curiosity surged stronger than fear, courage stronger than doubt. With one final glance at the converging multiverse, Ethan stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, a shockwave of energy pulsed through him, not painful, but transformative. He felt his consciousness expand, stretching to touch every reality, every life, every possibility. He was no longer just Ethan. He was the sum of all he had been, all he could be, and all he would become. Light enveloped him, wrapping him in warmth and clarity, and as it did, he realized something profound. He was no longer constrained by linear time or space. He was in the final quantum reality, not above it, not beside it, but within it. The universe was not separate from him. He was not separate from the universe. He was the observer, the participant, the creator, and the witness. And for the first time in his life, Ethan understood that life was never a straight path. It was a boundless, infinite canvas, and he held the brush.